Well, Shabbat Shalom again. This is week 5 of a subject we've been talking about that I've been incredibly excited about because I guess, like you, I've been trying to do this my whole walk. And you know, we usually don't title the things, but because they're on social media and they go on our website, they always ask me for a title, and I never know. And I just tell Denise and Roxanne, you know, figure it out. Because God doesn't give me titles, He just gives me a message. But for this one, it was a no-brainer. And, you know, titling something "How to Win God's Heart" or "How to Win God's Affection," I think is absolutely stunning. Because who doesn't want to do that as a believer, as a child of God? Who doesn't want to win God's heart? I mean, I think as children, no matter how old we get, sometimes we just want our mom and dad to say, "I'm so proud of you and what you become." Right? Because a lot of times when you're young, you know, your parents are constantly disciplining because they're discipling, they're teaching. And they spend much more time correcting than praising because as children, we spend a lot more time going off the path than staying on the path. And that's why the job is so difficult, because it's constantly trying to pull the reins in and get them back on the straight and narrow, right? But then when you become an adult and you have children of your own, even though you're an adult, in your eyes, you know, you're still like a child. I can remember visiting my mom when I was 50 years old and laying down next to her in bed and still feeling like a little boy. And anyway, so you just want to hear, I know for me, I just wanted to hear that from my mom. My dad passed away when I was very young, so I couldn't hear that, but her just say, "I'm so proud of you." It means everything. And so with your Heavenly Father, how bad do you want to hear, "I'm so proud of you"? Or, You've won my heart. And so I think any true believer, and I got to believe that Beth Yeshua is full of true believers for the most part. That's why the series was so important to me. You know, we spoke about the man who won God's heart. We spoke about King David. And we mentioned that, you know, he's mentioned more than anybody in the Bible, except for Yeshua. Yeshua's mentioned over 1,000 times, maybe like 1,050, depending on what version you're reading. And David's mentioned 950 times, and nobody comes close. Like Abraham is like 350, and Paul is 160. And he's the only one that's given that title, a man after God's heart. God, you know, he won God's affection. So I delved into his life because there's so much of his life in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel. The thing I want you to know, and not putting David down, is the first week we talked about how he fell. And how he fell was real simple. It says in the springtime when kings went to go off to war, David was found in the temple. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm just telling you, as adults and as children, don't be at the wrong place at the wrong time. You're going to fall. As strong as you think you are, as strong as I may think I am, I know that I'm incredibly weak. So I don't stay away from those things because I'm holy. I stay away from those things because I'm unholy. And I don't want to put God to the test. The other thing is, sadly enough, is he had too much time on his hands. It says when he got up from his afternoon nap, this guy's a warrior. What's he doing sleeping in the afternoon? And times of idleness and slothfulness and laziness will lead to times of temptation. And you know, you fall. Not only will it lead to times of temptation, but it will lead to times of oppression and depression. Most of the time when people have too much time on their hands, they start to think about themselves way too much. And they start to think about their regrets and things they wish they would have accomplished. And that just leads to oppression, if not depression. And, of course, the third thing was lust of the eyes and lust of the flesh and pride of life. I mean, he took his eyes off the prize. And, you know, I tell you this all the time. You know the saying, just because I'm on a diet doesn't mean I can't look at the menu? I got news for you guys. If you look at the menu long enough, you're going to order. Nobody's that strong, so don't even look at the menu. You know, don't even. So, but with that being said, after we got through week 1, we went through 5 character traits that David had that won God's heart. You know, and of course one was faith. There is no substitute for faith. The Lord loves when you trust Him. You know, faith smells the fragrance before it sees the flower. God loves faith because He's like, "Wow, you really trust me? Kid, you really trust me, huh?" He loves it. In fact, without faith, it's impossible to please God no matter how many works you do. Impossible. The other aspect of his life was he absolutely adored the Word of God. Show me somebody who loves God, and I'll show you somebody who loves His Word. Show me your Bible and I'll tell you how much you love God. If it looks like it's out of the box, something's radically wrong. The third thing we spoke about was David was always thankful. Constantly. He had all different seasons of his life, but he always remained thankful in it all. Fourth was he was penitent. When Nathan the prophet came and rebuked him, he said, I'm the man, right? Yeah. And Adam and Eve didn't do that. No. They played the blame game. Was Adam and Eve mentioned in Hebrews 11 among the honorable roll of people of faith? No, they were not. And last but not least, because this is his greatest attribute, he never questioned God's judgment. He never questioned whatever God did. When the baby was born and the baby was sick, he laid on the ground praying and fasting and begging God. And when the baby died, it said he got up, went into the temple, and worshiped. Never once did he say, hey, I prayed so hard. I know I'm not the best guy in the world, but clearly I've done some good things. Couldn't you spare my child? He never questioned God's motives, God's decisions, or God's judgments. That will be, if you do that, I'm telling you, if you are faithful, if you love the Word of God, if you stay penitent, if you don't question God, and you remain thankful, sounds easy, you'll win God's heart. It's just that simple, though. You don't have to look further than that. And then last week we spoke about his three friends. I just found these three obscure guys, Shovi, Machir, and Barzillai, and we learned a tremendous amount of application to our walk. If you want to apply some things, look at these three guys from last week and look at how they conducted themselves to King David, and this is how we should conduct ourselves towards King Yeshua. And we're going to finish up today and tie it into the announcement I want to make. And one of the things I want to tell you, I think I found a nugget. I think I found another nugget in David's life, and it blew me away. Hopefully it will blow you away. You know, sometimes when you get a message from the Lord, you get revelation, and you're blown away. You can't contain yourself, and you go to people and you tell them, and they look at you like, hopefully that will not happen today. But let's go to the first section and just finish off our study. 2 Samuel 16, 20, 23. You remember this guy? Ahithophel. In some of your versions, Ahithophel. He was David's counselor and David's best friend. They didn't come tighter. Absalom said to Ahithophel, give your advice as to what we should do. Ahithophel already went rogue, right? And he joined the insurrection of David's son. And the reason being, I told you, it's real simple. It was revenge, the green-eyed monster. He wanted to get back at David. Why? Bathsheba was his granddaughter. And he's like, you did this to my granddaughter? I'm going to nail you. And he couldn't stop. He just couldn't stop. You know, some people, when they want revenge and they're jealous, man, they'll just go to the extreme. So Absalom said to Ahithophel, give your advice as to what we should do. Ahithophel answered Absalom, go, and this was his first directive, his first counsel to Absalom. Go in and sleep with your father's concubines, the ones he left to take care of the palace. Because when David left, he left 10 behind. All Israel will hear that your father utterly despises you, and this will strengthen the position of all those who are on your side. Absalom, by the way, was a tremendous politician. I'm not big on politicians. Sorry, I know some of you know them, but I'm not big on being politically correct, and that's what politicians are. They have that perfect answer for everybody to please everyone, and that's not the Lord. He was a politician. He stood at the king's gate, and he met with the people because King David was busy, and he would say, my father doesn't really care, but I care about you. Tell me your situation, and if you make me king, it's the old, right? What do politicians do? Promise, 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 and they sit in an ivory tower and get paid well. He said, all Israel will hear that your father utterly despises you. You know, now I know why no politicians come to Beth Yeshua. I was always wondering, like, how come? All Israel will hear that your father utterly despises you, and this will strengthen the position of all those who are on your side. He's taking over. He's determined to take over the kingdom and kill his father, and nothing's going to stop him. So they set up a tent for Absalom on the roof of the palace in plain sight. And Absalom went in to sleep with his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. In those days, Ahithophel's advice was regarded as highly as if someone had sought out the word of God, meaning he was just as good. Even though he was a counselor, he was a prophet. He had a direct line to God. He heard from God. Nobody questioned his advice or his counsel. It was this way with Ahithophel's advice both to David and to Absalom. So here we go. I told you they followed his advice unquestionably. Whatever he said, they went with. So Ahithophel gives his counsel to Absalom to go in and sleep with his 10 concubines that David left behind in Jerusalem. Why? Because such an act would be an unspeakable insult to his father in front of all the people. Where is his father? He left. And it would constitute a direct claim to the throne. I'm coming after that throne, Dad, and nothing's going to stop me. So it was good advice as far as what Absalom was trying to accomplish. But then he gave his second bit of advice, which a lot of people don't see. Look at 2 Samuel 17, 1 through 4. It says, Ahithophel said to Absalom, let me now choose, let me, forget about you, let me choose 12,000 men, fighting men, military men, and I will pursue David. He's angry, and he's vengeful, and he's going after David. This is personal. And he says, I will pursue David tonight. Give me 12,000 men. I'll fall on him unexpectedly when he's tired and powerless. I'll frighten him. But listen, David was an incredible warrior. He's barking up the wrong tree. He should have known better. I'll frighten him. All the people with him will flee. I'll attack only the king, meaning I won't take out any of the people. I'll kill him. Then I'll bring back these people, and they'll fall under your sovereignty. And when they have all returned, accept the one you are seeking, meaning David, I'll take him out. All the people will be at peace. They'll defer to you. They'll fall under your dynasty. What he said pleased Absalom. How could he go wrong, right? He's trying to kill David, so you'll kill him for me? Great. Go and kill him for me. Take the 12,000 men, and then bring back the other soldiers, David's soldiers. They'll work for me, right? Power and might. But this is the problem, okay? God is bigger than anyone or anything. And when I tell you God's in control, it's not by happenstance. It's not something that you read in a spiritual fortune cookie. I'm telling you God is in control. The problem that you have with believing that is too many of you are at the helm. You can't have two gods. If you're going to be the God of your life, then you expect him to follow your will, you could forget it. You've got to let go of the controls, man. And let's be honest, some of you are control freaks. You have to have it the way you want it. It has to be your way. It's his way. And this is what Ahithophel's gonna find out, sadly enough. Okay? So, his advice, though, sadly enough, let's continue in verse 5. It was thwarted. Watch. Then Absalom said, now call also to Hushai the Archite. Who's Hushai? Seriously? Hushai was somebody, he was a double agent. He worked for David, and David left him behind. And he was going to be used to thwart Absalom's plans. And when he would find out information, who was he going to tell? Abiathar and Zadok, the priests. They would tell their sons, and their sons would then go and tell David. There had to be layers, because otherwise they'd be seen. So he was working as a double agent. He said, let's give equal hearing to what he has to say. Why did Absalom say that? Ahithophel's advice was gold. Why did he have to speak to Hushai? Probably because it says in Proverbs that God holds the hearts of kings in his hands and guides them like streams of water. Can God do that? Guys, how small is your God? Are you kidding me? There's nothing God can't do besides lie. Absalom said to him, Ahithophel has said such and such. Should we do what he says? They never questioned Ahithophel. All of a sudden he's questioning him, right? With Hushai, who's working for David, but he doesn't even know it. Wow. The advice Ahithophel has given this time is not good. You know, continued Hushai, that your father and his men are powerful men, and that they are as bitter as a bear deprived of cubs, meaning this counselor is going to come with his little candy hands. He's going to get taken out. And your 12,000 men cannot stand up to David's warriors. They are not. You have men, but they're not trained. Not like David's guys. So you're barking up the wrong tree. Your father's a military man. He's not going to be camping with the rest of the people. You think he's stupid? He's going to be in a cave by himself. Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel. Why? For Adonai has determined to frustrate. You see? God's in control, man. So that Adonai could bring disaster on Absalom. So, his advice was not taken, and his plan was thwarted. Look at what happens next. 2 Samuel 17:23. When Ahithophel saw that his advice was not being followed, he's totally rejected. He's totally despondent. And he realized that Absalom's defeat is imminent and his eventual ruin is at hand. For God is with David. He's done. Look what he does. He saddles his donkey, sets out and goes home to his city. At least he had some decency. He sets his house in order. Makes sure his family's taken care of. Then he hangs himself. He died and was buried in his father's tomb. What does this show me? That both in Ahithophel's life and his death, he was a type of Judas Iscariot. Yes. Judas also betrayed the king, and he hung himself as well. Isn't that beautiful? Yes. It's so bothersome to me how people break up the Old and New Testament. Like, well, the Old Testament was for them. The New Testament is for me. The Bible's for you, buddy. The Bible's for you, and you're going to miss incredible lessons in it if you forego the Old Testament, which, by the way, is at least 2/3 of the Bible. So we see Ahithophel. We see his life and his death, and it's very sad, yes? Now, this is what God is showing me. I don't know why, but he's showing this to me. Then he takes me in 2 Samuel 15. Don't ask me why. I just went, right? And I see the king sets out. This is when David is leaving Jerusalem. He's concerned about the people. He doesn't want to see a war. He doesn't want to see a civil war. So he's putting himself out to protect the people. It says the king sets out with the people after him. But they waited at the last house for all the servants to pass by him in review. He's picking certain people to go with him. All the Keretai and the Peletai and the Gittim, 600 men who had accompanied him from Gath, that's Gath and the Philistines. They passed in review before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, or the Gittite, you too? Like you're coming too? Why are you going with us? Go back and stay with your king in Gath, since you are both a foreigner and an exile from your own place. You arrived only yesterday. You just got here. Should I ask you to wander around with us? Look at the heart of David. He was so not selfish. He could have said, look, I don't care if he dies. If he dies, he dies, protecting me, right? What do I care? He wasn't that kind of king. He went to the front lines, man. He fought by example. It wasn't his words, it was his actions. He's an incredible guy. There's no telling where I may go. I don't know what's going to be. I don't know if I'm going to assume the throne again. I don't know what God's plans are. So look, return to your own kinsmen. It's not going to go well with you. Grace and truth be with you. You'll never get away from that. It's all over the Bible. Yeshua was full of grace and truth. David was full of grace and truth. You're not going to get away from it. If you're all grace, you are so incredibly unbalanced. It's pathetic. And if you're all truth, you're so incredibly unbalanced. It's pathetic. I meet them all the time. I meet the Hebrew roots people. They've got the corner on truth. They know all the truth. And they're just destructive and miserable and bitter. I meet the grace people. It's all about grace. You know, Jesus paid it all and I don't have to do anything. Both positions are off. You got to bring them both together. And that's where you'll find the Lord. So as Adonai lives, as my Lord lives, Ittai says, wherever my Lord the king may be, whether for death or for life, your servant will be there too. So I see this guy Ittai. I don't think too many people know who he is. But here, Absalom's revolt led to David's flight. That's what you're reading here, okay? And those who went with David were the Keretai. They were foreign mercenaries. They weren't Jews. They were foreign mercenaries. They were soldiers, paid soldiers. And the Peletai, they were guardsmen. They were his bodyguard, okay? And then you've got 600 Philistines who left Gath to join David. One of these was this guy Ittai. So David's saying, go back to your homeland. You know, you're in exile. You just joined the ranks. I don't know what's going to be. Please look out for yourself. And he's like, no, you don't understand. Okay? Just like Ruth, where you go, I go. Where you die, I die. I'm going to say, look at the beauty of that. So then God says to me, look up their names. Look up their names. And I'm hoping that I'm hearing from him. Because if there's nothing to their names, like if one means willow, you know, it's like, I can't make anything out of that. So I don't know if I'm hearing. I don't know. You don't know. So you look into it. So I look into Ahithophel's name, and this is what it means. My brother is foolish. Wait a minute. Then I look, and I'm like, okay, I get it. I get it. Please, let Ittai's name not mean willow. And I look up Ittai's name, and this is what it means. With me. Is this not the way to end this thing? Guys, Yeshua says, my brother, because remember, Remember, I don't want to make this distinction because Yeshua is definitely part of the Godhead. But you got to understand something. His mother was a human being. His father was God. God the Father doesn't have a human mother. So as the Messiah, he had to come in human form. God had to send himself in human form because for this amount of sin, there had to be an eternal or infinite sacrifice. And no human being has that kind of infinity to their blood. You follow? So he had to have both to bridge the gap between us and the Lord. You follow? But at the end of John, the very end, almost the last thing he says to Mary Magdalene, go to my brothers. God, the Father, would never say, go to my brothers. I can't be a brother with God the Father. But Yeshua says, go to my brothers. You can't refute this, guys. It does not matter what theology you were raised with. It doesn't matter what you believe. You cannot refute what the Bible says. He says, go to my brothers and tell my brothers I'm going where? It's right in there. To my Father and your Father. I'm going to my God and your God. So Yeshua is asking every one of us today, hey, are you going to be foolish, my brother, or are you with me? There's no other question. There's no happy medium. You're either going to be foolish, my brother, or you're going to be with him. And the question that I have is, what does it mean to be with the Lord? Now, parting words are important. You know, my father was carried out in a bag in the middle of the night. I mean, if you're there with your loved one and they're giving you their last words, it's usually very special. Moses gave a farewell address in Deuteronomy 31. Joshua gave a farewell address. Samuel gave a farewell address, and David did too. David spoke to his son Solomon. And I think with all David went through and all we spoke about in David's life, I think we should let him have the parting words, okay? Look at 1 Kings. These are his parting words. It says, the time came near for David to die. He's dying. He's going to die any moment. So he commissioned Shlomo, his son, as follows. I'm going the way of all the earth. Therefore be strong. Show yourself a man. A lot of versions says basically the same thing. It says, be a man. Now, what is your version? What is your understanding? What's your interpretation? What's your philosophy, if you will, about being a man? I know what it was for me. As a young kid growing up in the projects, being a man, I remember the first time I got into a real bad fist fight. I might have been like 6 or 7 years old. And this kid was tough, and he beat the snot out of me. And I came upstairs, and my father said, what happened? And I told him, and he said, go down there and finish it. Now, that's kind of tough for a little kid, huh? Who just got the snot beat out of him in front of like 60 kids who were watching. That was the way I was kind of raised, okay? So being a man means don't cry, be tough. You know, you follow what I'm saying? So what is David saying? I have a funny story for you. You remember when I got out, well, some of you remember, when I got out of the hospital 12 years ago? Was it 12 years ago now? 12 years ago. Everything went wrong. I had a 12-centimeter aneurysm. They fed me. They didn't put an NG tube in. I distended. I went back in the OR. My intestines fell out. I coded. It was all bad. I aspirated. I'd C. diff. I leave the hospital after 18 days in a wheelchair because I can't walk. I got oxygen because I can't breathe. I'm crapping all over myself. And Bernadette signs us up for ballroom dancing. Now, I don't know if she was just trying to finish me off because she finally found out that the life insurance was paid. I don't know. But at this point, I was so happy to be alive that I was willing to do anything. So it was like 3 weeks the course was going to start. You know this Howard Community Center in Macon? So it's there. I think there's 3 or 4 other couples. I get there. I could hardly walk, man. And she's got me signed up to ballroom dancing. Now, understand something. I'm not homophobic at all. I'm not. I grew up in New York City. I'm not. However, I have a biblical view on marriage and a biblical view on life. So I totally disagree with it because it disagrees with God's position. And I never felt comfortable with it. But the instructor was obviously, it was blatant. Okay? All right. So So I don't know what I'm doing. I'm tripping over my feet. And the other 3 couples took ballroom dancing before. So like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and I've got like 2 left feet. So we're dancing, and the guy comes over, and he goes, may I cut in? And so I step back, and I go, sure. And he goes, no, you. Now, I was in a weakened state, but I wasn't that weak. So in the ballroom dancing, you start, whenever you look at your partner, you go in this position. What are you doing?
I'm trying to show
I didn't even ask you to stand up.
Well,
You go in this way. So I back off. Because first of all, I'm so weak anyway, I would have let anybody dance when I was so happy to be alive. But especially him, right? But anyway, so I said, yeah, go ahead. And he goes, no, you. And I'm like, so all I said to him was, who's the man? Because I was just trying to find out who's leading. Are you leading or am I leading? So he goes, you're the man. I said, what? I didn't hear him. I said, what did you say? He said, you're the man. And all of a sudden, I don't know, manliness came over me. I was like, say it louder, right? Am I lying? I said, say it louder. He goes, you're the man. I said, now we're ready to dance. And I danced with him. I did. I danced with him. But anyway, that's, anyway, my point is that that's what it means to be a man. But here's David, a man's man. He is afraid of nobody. You know, Joab, I mean, he's all scarred up. These guys are crazy warriors, guys. They're not afraid of anybody. So now he says, be a man. And the next verse is magical because it describes what David thinks a man is to his son Solomon, who's the new king. And look what it says. You want to be a man? Guys, you want to be a man? Then observe the charge of Adonai your God, to go in his ways, keep his regulations, his mitzvot, his rulings, and his instructions in accordance with what is written in the Torah of Moshe, so that you will succeed in all that you do, wherever you go. No matter how you slice it and dice it, no matter what new church comes to Macon, no matter what denomination starts, it's all about trusting and obeying. It's just that simple. That's what pleases the heart of God, trusting and obeying. Now, with that being said, the Lord has crazily blessed us here at Beth Yeshua. When I first came, I saw there was, I noticed, I didn't realize this, but whenever there's a new church in Macon, everybody comes out. I don't know what it is. It's like whenever there's new anything, a new fast food place opens up, a new nail salon, everybody comes. And so I didn't realize that. We had all these people come out and then they all disappeared overnight. And I think the ones that stayed, they were just so enamored with some of these things they were learning. Like when we went to Mabel White the first year I was here, which is a fairly large church, and at that time they had, I think, close to 1,000 people. And they're right here on Bass Road. I was teaching there on Wednesday night. I didn't know how the Baptist organization works because I didn't know how any church organization works. And on Wednesday night, you have all these classes, and people sign a sheet to partake in the class, right? You have all these different teachers and all these different subjects. So we started a class. Somebody asked me, would you teach on the feasts and how they apply to Yeshua? I said, sure. I was quite nervous, and I think about 6 people were in the room. I was fine with that because I'm used to Messianic Judaism anyway. It's incredibly small, so I was okay. It wouldn't matter to me. I remember being a youth pastor at Beth Judah, and there were 2 people, remember, that used to come. 2, the rabbi's son and his friend. And then it dropped down to a rabbi's son, and I was still faithful. I would show up every week like there was 2,000 people. And so I was there, and then I just asked them, I said, look, you might hear things that you've never heard. Just give me a little bit of grace. Just listen in a little bit and check it out with the scriptures and identify with the Holy Spirit, see if it marinates and it resonates. And then it got to where, it was crazy. More people came. And finally, the head of the education department came to me and said, we have to go into the sanctuary now. And I said, I'm so sorry. What, did I do something wrong? He goes, no. There was a couple hundred people there on a Wednesday night. And they were coming from different denominations. And there was excitement, remember? People were excited. They were pumped and excited. And they were like little birdies who were getting fed for the first time. And I saw it. They were so pumped and it was beautiful. I was excited for them. They were excited. And it was a absolutely beautiful thing. With that being said, though, guys, I don't know if you know my heart, but ever since I'm a little boy, my mother would say when they would come on the trains in the 70s and the late 60s in New York, the blind guys and the deaf guys, and they come into, I'd start hysterically crying and put money in their till. It was just my heart. It was just my heart. And in Judaism, one of the most important things is tzedakah, charity. It's our major principle. It's one of the 3 major principles. So I just said to the Lord, look, I know I can go on like this. I can have these nice Gentile Baptists coming to Beth Yeshua and teaching them things they never knew, but God, that just doesn't seem fulfilling to me at all. It's like I'm teaching saved souls. Like, is that what you really want for me? And that's when I started to cry out for things, and that's when Nevi Michael came along, miraculously. And that's when India came along, and that's when Kenya came along. And I think we've done, to be honest with you, I think God has done exceptionally well, blessing us with the poor, the widow, and the orphan. I mean, when Yeshua said, what you do for the least of me, when did we see you hungry? When did we see you naked? When I go to these places, they are naked. They don't have clothes. They are starving. When did we see you like this? He said, what you've done to the least, you've done to me. These are the least. The poor, the widow, and the orphan. The orphan is the least. The least. And so he's done a beautiful job. Interestingly enough, I got to tell you, I get an email every Saturday from Samuel. Just listen to this. This is priceless. This is worth it. Shabbat Shalom, dearest brother Greg Hershberg and blessed family. Greetings to both of you, to your blessed family, and all the saints with you in Yeshua Messiah. My dearest brothers, some words I still can't explain in English well, so please kindly read. It does not matter how many days we live on earth. It only matters how much work we do for the Lord. I always encourage our pastors to be strong and genuine. I fear to God, and I fear you as my spiritual father. Besides, I do not fear to any powers. We have lots of persecution, lots of temptations, lots of hardships. You don't know the half of it. I do not worry, and I'm never sad about these things. This is an amazing thing with these guys that I'm blessed with. Their persecutions are crazy, guys. I mean, they're knocked around, beaten up. They never will tell you about them. It's crazy. It's crazy what the Lord has blessed us with. I do not worry, and I'm never sad. We are always encouraged by your teachings, love, and sacrificial support. Without you and BYI, we are nothing, which is true. When I met them, they had a couple of kids in the village and him. Now they have 200 pastors. 200. But just listen, because sometimes, like me, I can't find good ministries to invest in. I can't. They're top-heavy. They have too much administration. So I can't. So I search, and I search, and I beg God every day, show me. Every day I beg God to show me. You ask Bernadette how many times I tell her if he would just show me, I would invest in those things, because we have funds coming in from people. They'll give towards this ministry. But understand, if you're not doing anything, at least if you're supporting this ministry, you're supporting these efforts. Don't you understand? How could you say no to that? We have lots of persecutions. Without you, we are nothing. Without God's help, without your prayers and blessings, we are nothing. This is all because of you and your great love only. You showed the Lord's loving compassion when you came. So we are doing our best to reach many new people and new places. I am using every penny you send for the Lord's work. This is, trust me, he uses every penny. He lives in the same crappy shack when I met him 12 years ago. And one time his daughter, who's named after our daughters, Shana and Lily, one time she said to him, Daddy, Rabbi Greg sent so much money, can't we buy something? And his answer was, the money's not for us, Shay. You're never going to find a guy like this or a ministry like this. He says, I will never sell out for money. This is what I teach them. Don't ever. People are going to call you. They're going to try to invest in you so they can use you. Don't sell out for money. I need money to do his more work only. This year, we helped a few congregation buildings to construct. Listen to this. We constructed a building in Baragadu village. 40 believers in that village. Doesn't sound like much, but do you know what goes on in India and Indian religion? We constructed a building in Masalu village. 30 more believers. Keep count, that's 70. We constructed a building very recently in Palavan. 50 more believers. We constructed a building in Samatia village, Pastor Saboro. 60 more believers. These people are just joining. They think if you go to them, if you go to Pastor Sabaro in this village where there's mud huts, and you say, do you have a covering? They'll say, Beth Yeshua in Macon. That's what they think. They think they're under us. And they are, because Samuel's under us, and they're under him. And as we give him money, he divvies it out. I totally trust him. We helped to construct a building for Pastor VJ, 120 more believers. We helped Pastor Joshua to construct his building. You believe this? 60 more believers. Who's ever heard of this? This is this year. Who plants this much? We helped Pastor Rajamar to construct his building. 60 more believers. We just constructed a building in Gadavita Village. Pastor Thomas, 80 more believers. And then he knows my heart about the old age, so he said, brother, we just distributed food, clothing, soaps, brushes, shampoos, and cleaning agents to the old age home. And by the way, any of you can go visit. If you don't believe me in the pictures and you don't believe Samuel, I brought him here, just go visit. Be prepared. But you're welcome. You are absolutely welcome. You could leave tomorrow. Today, if you can get a flight out, I'll just call him. Tell him you're coming. Don't be a burden, but you're going to be blown away. We also visited the handicapped school last month. We helped them with medicines and distributed their needs. We prayed with them, and they prayed for you. Yesterday, we fed 100 children. We did this a couple of times. My dearest brother, we conducted a pastor's fellowship. We distributed clothes to the pastors and their wives. We bought new clothes for 50 pastors. Every year, we give them a pair of clothes. What that means is they only have one outfit. So when you give them a second outfit, you just increased their clothes by 100%. We distributed clothes to 35 pastors on the 12th of December in Jamapeta village. We are distributing a pair of clothes to 30 pastors on December 19th in Amaparan town. We're distributing clothes to widows and orphans on December 21st. We're distributing clothes to 20 more pastors in Guntaru region. Guys, I'm just going to tell you, he does more in a freaking week than most pastors do in sometimes in a lifetime. Except because most places, what do you got? You come, you get a nice little message, you fill in the blanks, and then you show up for men's meeting, women's meeting, and life goes on. Right or wrong? Dearest, my lovely brother, thank you for your kind and continuous prayers. Thank you for your sacrificial support. We are doing above all because of you and because of Beth Yeshua International. Thank you so much for your faithful prayers. We love you, my sister. I am now closing this email with lifted up praying hands. We are daily praying for your good health, dearest sister Bernadette, for your blessed children, and for all the saints and brothers and sisters we have at Beth Yeshua. Yours, brother and Messiah Samuel. Stephen could say the same thing. Arnie is just planted a congregation among 7,000 Jewish people in Perth, Australia. So, God has blessed us because religion, James talks about, that he regards as those that take care of the poor, the woman, the orphan. Guys, what if you know the scriptures so well? What if you got the t-shirt? What if the scripture is on your fridge, but you're not doing anything to fulfill the scripture? He's blessed us, yes? Yes. And it even says, what about the least, those in prison? Do we not have a congregation in McRae Correctional Facility? Yes. Not a prison ministry, a congregation. Do we not have a congregation in Pulaski State Prison? Yes. Not a ministry where you go once a week, a congregation. Yes. Beth Yeshua Pulaski State Prison, where the girls that go there have to renounce all affiliations and they have to be exclusive to a Messianic lifestyle. Have you heard of this? I haven't. I was in prison ministry for years. They never asked me to start a congregation. This is crazy. And we just sent out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of CDs to tons of prisons just recently. But there's one piece of the puzzle, man, that really touches my heart. Sometimes I consider these, forgive me, I know they don't want my pity, but I consider these the least of the least. Look at the scripture, Leviticus 19:14. Solomon was told, hey, obey the verse, right? It says, do not speak a curse against a deaf person or place an obstacle in the way of a blind person. Rather, fear your God. He's talking about the disabled. He's saying take care of the disabled. Now, I know, I'm not talking about, I got a friend a good friend, Tom Sellers, who won a gold medal at the Paralympics in Barcelona. He was in a car accident. You know, he's paralyzed from the waist down, but he's a wheelchair racer. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about the frozen. those that just can't move. I mean, to me, it's maybe their parents would tell me, don't have pity on us. That's not the way I see it. I see it as a sad situation. Sorry. That's just the way I see it. So, I met a guy, I'm going to tell you the story real quick. I met a guy a year ago, Bill Forster. He was supposed to be here today. Sadly enough, his flight got canceled. He's in Boca Raton, former president of the Conservative Synagogues of America. He's watching right now. He's the guy that they call. They just called him for a rabbi in Detroit. They call him for cantors. All the rabbis, all the congregations call him because he has the connections all throughout America, and he finds rabbis for these places. He just placed a rabbi in Detroit, one of the biggest synagogues in Michigan. This is what he does. I met him a year ago. How did I meet him? He's on the board of Neve Michael. They're sitting there along the board table having their annual board meeting, and my name comes up, Rabbi Greg Hershberg, and he says, how come I don't know him? He says right away, how come I don't know him? Because he knows all the rabbis in America out of the Jewish Theological Seminary. And they said, well, he's Messianic. And he's like, what exactly does that mean? And they told him, and I thought, okay, they're going to kick me on Neve Michael. But instead, he calls me. He introduced himself, and he says, I want to meet with you. And the reason why he wanted to meet with me is because we're the biggest benefactor in Neve Michael. And Hava loves me, and so she said, you got to meet the guy. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about his agenda. But I said, well, you're down in Florida. I'm going to be going down there for a meeting in Orlando. He said, I'll drive up. And we have lunch, and it lasts like 3 hours, and we realize we're very kindred in our attitude and our desire to help people that are in bad shape. So he has this Forster Foundation. He's a businessman, very wealthy, but he kind of saw the light. And he's done with business, and all he wants to do now, all his whole mode of being, is to help depraved and abused children in the land of Israel. That's his exclusive ministry. Okay? I know him 1 year, that's his exclusive ministry. Okay. So, he's the president of the Forster Foundation, and he's working with Neve Michael, and I introduce him to Dean Hahn, because I know Dean's very influential in the Baptist world. He was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention in Georgia, president of the Southern Baptist Convention in Tennessee. It's like 8,000 churches. And Dean loves Israel. I met him many years ago when I first got here, and he fell in love with Israel, and he hasn't looked back. Every sermon he speaks about Israel, and he supports Israel tremendously. He supports the Messianic community tremendously, and he's one of my best friends. So I figured, I don't know why, but God said, introduce him to Dean. So I introduced him to Dean. And then I introduced Dean to Neve Michael. And then Dean starts getting involved with Neve Michael. Anyway, the next thing I know is Bill is telling me about some ministry called Hope International, okay? It's out of Rock Valley, Iowa. They started in 1994, and they design, and they develop, and they manufacture state-of-the-art wheelchairs. You can't get these. However, they don't sell them. They're not for commerce. And in over 20 years, they have sent 130,000 wheelchairs to over 100 countries. But they have never sent one to Israel. And so that's where Bill is contacting this guy and saying, we need to do something in Israel. And he contacted me, and he said, are you in? I said, I'll talk to the elders, but I'm all in. If Beth Yeshua is not in, I'm in personally. You know, so just know I'm in. So let me just show you real quickly a video, just so you get an idea of what Hope, that's Hope Haven. The wheelchairs are second to none. They're manufactured either in Guatemala or a correctional facility in Iowa. Prisoners, lifers are making these things, okay? Everybody that works there is a volunteer. And they actually fly over to the countries and they adjust these wheelchairs. The way they get them is you have to fill out all kinds of forms, all kinds of medical forms. Tell us exactly what situation the kid is. One kid might have a leg frozen up in the air. One might be tilted this way. So you have to construct the wheelchairs. It's not the standard wheelchair. They won't work. And these are second to none, customized. And these guys go all around the world, international symposiums, to speak about these things, but they're not for sale. You follow? Let me show you a quick video. Can you get those lights? I just want you to see what they do.
Antigua, Guatemala, one of the oldest cities in Central America. It's a popular tourist destination and known for ancient ruins and beautiful Spanish Baroque architecture. Adorned with rich traditions, and where music and dancing are a way of life. Just outside the city, staff and volunteers from Hope Haven are paying a visit to a small village and snapping a few selfie photos with the children. This is where Hope Haven, Guatemala operates a small factory that is changing the lives of people, not only in Guatemala, but around the world. From this facility, a small but dedicated team of workers build and refurbish most of the wheelchairs that will ultimately be distributed to countries all across the globe. Many employees here, who were once recipients of wheelchairs themselves, are now working and supporting their families with jobs at the factory. Angel is just one success story here at Hope Haven.
When he was born, his parents' biggest concern was, who's going to take care of Angel when we're too old to take care of him? Well, guess what? Every other Friday when Angel gets paid, he deposits money into their accounts and helps support his elderly mother and father. His parents never imagined that he would be able to not only find a job, but help support them.
Pero gracias a Dios que tengo este trabajo.
Thanks to the Lord, he has this job.
These women are particularly blessed to have a job at the factory. Women in Guatemala can have a difficult time finding work. For women with disabilities, finding a decent job that pays well in this poor economy can be all but impossible. In another part of the facility, staff and volunteers from the United States are fitting the new wheelchairs to the children for which they are specially designed. The team will take great care to see to it every part of the wheelchair fits the child's little body perfectly. This young mother and her son have been waiting patiently for this new chair, and it's now ready. Let's see how it fits. They'll make adjustments to the chair until it fits just right. It's time to hit the open road with the brand new wheels. It's a little slow going at first, but she won't give up. She'll figure it out soon enough, and she'll be off and running. It's also here at the facility in Guatemala that workers assemble Hope Haven's signature design in wheelchairs. And it's their flagship model. It's called the B-Line, and it's recognizable by the characteristic black and yellow design. It's a revolutionary design in wheelchairs, versatile, adjustable, and extremely durable over rough terrain. Today, the staff is putting the finishing touches on not one, but two B-Line wheelchairs for a pair of twin boys.
Did you notice the difference here, how that this piece here is put in an upright position? This, it's the same piece, but it's just flipped upside down.
Mother and grandmother have arrived with the boys. The staff will give their chair a final cleaning. A few adjustments, the chairs are ready. I think we got a winner here. But for his twin brother, it's been a long day. This new chair makes a good place for a nap. In another small village outside Guatemala City, the team is delivering another B-Line wheelchair to a young girl and her family. The family can set out for a walk around the neighborhood, where together, with new freedom and mobility for her and her family, they can dream about her new potential and about where she can go with her whole life ahead of her and no limits to her mobility. there is hope for the world in Guatemala.
Their larger factory is in the state penitentiary, and lifers are able to put these things together and give people some freedom. Some of these kids are 14, 15, and when they bring them to get their wheelchair, the mothers are carrying them on their back. And the World Health Organization says there's 65 million people in the world that need these things. So I met him and I said, I'm in, and I met with the executive director of Hope Haven and asked him for his approval and his blessing to let us be involved. Now, Israel is known as a developed country as opposed to a developing country. What people don't know about Israel is that about 25 to 30% of the people live below the poverty line. The poverty line in Israel is $900 a month. And the cost of living is much higher than it is here in the United States. This is a statistic by the Central Bureau of Statistics. It's not something I'm making up in the National Institute of Insurance. And they report 6.5 million Jews are living below the poverty level. And I spoke to a guy at Hershberg Hospital. I met with him, one of the largest hospitals in Jerusalem. And they deal with, they specialize in a range of services for children with major disabilities. These are some of the children they work with. He's very Jewish, and the first thing I asked him, I said, can you buy wheelchairs in Israel? And he said, they're $5,000 a piece. Yeah. And I said, how bad do you need these things? He said, these kids haven't even been outside. Some of them have never seen the sun. So I said, look, I'm a Messianic Jew, but would you let me get some wheelchairs for them? The neat thing about Israel that people don't know is these kids are not just Jewish kids. They're Arabs, they're Muslims, some are Palestinians, some of their parents would just blow them up. But they're frozen, and so now you got the logistics. And the logistics is, people don't understand. How do you get them over there? How do you ship them on a container? Then who's going to receive them? Then how are you going to distribute them? The logistics are overwhelming, just overwhelming. But over time, God has introduced me to people. It's crazy. So I realized, wait a minute. In Tennessee, there's a factory, a warehouse. It's called Hope of Israel. It was birthed out of the Tennessee Baptist Convention. And I've met with the guy, and I've been to the warehouse. They ship containers every month. Then there's the Joseph Project in Israel, an MJA organization. They can receive them. And then there's Hershberg Hospital who to get them to. So I got the guy who would deliver them. I got the guys who would manufacture them. I got the guy who would distribute them to the hospital. So here's the flow chart. Hope Haven manufactures them. They go to Harvest of Israel in Tennessee. They'll ship them out of Savannah. Joseph Project receives it, and they'll distribute it right to Hershberg. Bill told me that there was just one thing missing with this whole thing, and that's the money. So I told Bill we serve a big God, so I was going to give him a big check. So we're going to start out. The check is in the mail, according to our accountants, and we're going to give him a check for $25,000, which will pay for 50 wheelchairs to start. The neat thing, guys, is that if all goes as planned, and please keep this in prayer, they're going to try to ship them in February, so that when we go over there in April, we're going to be able to visit Hershberg Hospital and see the 50 kids Now keep praying for more funds to come into Beth Yeshua, because we've now connected with 10 other facilities. One's called Menachem Zichron. Remember Menachem, a family who lost their kid to cancer. Now they have this center with kids it's unbelievable the opportunity we have right now in Israel with these 10 facilities. So please keep that in mind. The last thing I want to tell you is I want to show you a slide. This was my mother's favorite saying. My mom was a real giver. Do you have that slide? Okay. My mom was an incredible giver. She worked at Yankee Stadium selling hot dogs, the only girl there. She had holes in her shoes. Her family was incredibly, incredibly poor. She put herself through school, and she wanted to work in Harlem. This is when Harlem was incredibly dangerous, incredibly poor, 100% black, and she wanted to work there to help people as a social worker. That was my mom. And everybody loved my mom for obvious reasons. But when I was a little boy, she'd always say, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? This is a saying from the Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, back in the 1st century by Hillel the Elder. And what he was saying is, yes, you have to take care of your family. Who will? Who's going to take care of my kids if not Bernadette and I? But if I'm only for my family, what kind of person am I? It's balancing the self with selflessness, you follow? So Beth Yeshua could never be a place, never would it be a place, it never will be a place where we just, fatten up the crew that come. We've got to do something. I'm telling you, many times the world says, what are you doing, God? Where are you? And we sing the song, I want to be his hands and I want to be his feet. It's a heck of a song. But what's the good of singing it if you're not going to do it? This is an incredible opportunity for me. It's an incredible opportunity for you. We have about 50 people going to Israel. Do you realize I'm hoping that 50 people will wheel out each child? We will take pictures with them. We'll put them on their websites. And listen, we don't benefit from this. What's happening right now, you don't know this, but Bill has a social media campaign. He spent a fortune in. There's thousands and thousands of people watching. What some of these people are going to do? Send money to Nevel. They might send money to Samuel. They might send money to Hope Haven. If God can use us for that, do you know what an incredible, beautiful blessing that is? If God can use our little congregation with all the people that watch to help foster and promote some of these ministries, who are quality ministries, working with volunteers and really legitimately helping, not buying a new Lexus for Deacon so-and-so. You follow? So what a blessing to be part of this. You follow? What a blessing. And I just found out from Dean that he's going to be hosting a trip the same time, go figure, with the Family Research Council. Tony Perkins, anybody familiar? There's 120 on his trip. Some of these guys are congressmen and congresswomen, and we're going to direct them to Hershberg Hospital. We're going to bring them there with Christian Broadcasting Network if it works out, and they're going to film some of this for Christian Broadcasting Network, and we'll just be in the shadows, you follow? It's not about Beth Yeshua, and it's not about you, and it's not about me. This morning when I said to Bernadette, I'm so upset that Bill's not going to be here, and she said, but it's not about Bill, and it's not about you. It's about helping the kids. That's what it's all about, storing up treasures in heaven. So I hope you're excited. I hope you're incredibly pumped. And guys, I feel like this is just the beginning. I don't feel like this is the culmination. I feel like we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. And I just want to live longer so I can keep doing and doing and doing for the Lord and for people. Let's stand together. Well, it's beginning to look a lot like Hanukkah. It's going to be upon us, and it's going to be upon us. Somebody asked me yesterday, they came here to do a little snippet, a little video snippet. And, a lot of people think Hanukkah is like Jewish Christmas, right? And I said, it has nothing to do with Christmas. Christmas is the time of the year that the church celebrates the birth of Jesus, the birth of Messiah. I said, Hanukkah is about a band of rebel Jews who fought the Seleucid Empire so that they wouldn't assimilate. I said, but do you realize if there was no Hanukkah, there'd be no Christmas? And the guy obviously was like, You know, it's almost like fighting words. What are you talking about? You know, and I said, well, think about it. If all the Jews assimilated to a kind of a Hellenistic society, then there'd be no Jews. And if there was no Jews, there'd be no tribe of Judah. And if there's no tribe of Judah, there'd be no line of Judah. There's no line of Judah, hark the angels don't sing. So if there was no line of Judah, there'd be no Christmas. So you see how important, once again, the Jewish people and how instrumental they are in birthing the Messiah and willing to give up thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lives to shed the bloodshed of their own children to not assimilate so that we can sit around the tree and have good cheer. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. In the name of the Prince of all peace, Yeshua. Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yo'er Adonai panav elecha v'hunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, guys. I love you.